Well, we've reached week 7. My Giants finally go up against Derek's Eagles, and it's for first place. God, that's sad to say. Oh, my goodness. Welcome to a new episode of the Zero Technique Football Podcast, brought to you by backsportspage.com. You can follow me on Twitter at rstern33, and join with me, as always, is Derek Mountain. Find him on Twitter at Derek Mountain. How's it going, Derek?
Good. I didn't even think about it, but we are enemies this week.
Bring it on. We are. We are. and again, like I said, we are battling for first place. Whoever wins tomorrow night is going to be in first place.
It's going to be some bad football. Short week with those few teams. It's going to be some bad football.
Yeah, so we'll get into the an expanded, just what everyone wants, an expanded breakdown of Giants Eagles during our pick segment. We will do our Week 6 takeaways, but we have 3 bits of news that I want to get into before we get into our takeaways. And the first one, which obviously I think has been the most headline-grabbing and kind of head-scratching. I guess maybe the Miami Dolphins saw what the Chicago Bears did, and going off a 3-game winning streak, decided now's a good time to make a quarterback change. And what I've been saying for the past couple weeks on the show about the Miami Dolphins being much better than anyone was giving them credit for has really shown that they've won 3 in a row. Ryan Fitzpatrick has looked really good in all 3 of those games, and the Miami Dolphins going into their bye week. So I guess now it is as good a time as any, because you give him an extended period of time to get ready for their next game. But it is a little head-scratching to think about that this is a team moving in the right direction, even with Ryan Fitzpatrick under center, that now they're bringing Tua Tagovailoa in as their starter.
I was absolutely shocked, and I love Tua. I think the Miami fit is awesome. I love Brian Flores. I love what Chris Greer's done as a GM there, but man, like, so many reasons not to play him right now, I think. And one of them being out of the bayou of Aaron Donald. And look, I think Tua is going to bring an element to that offense that Ryan Fitzpatrick couldn't bring. But this isn't about talent. We always knew that Tua was way better than Ryan Fitzpatrick. That wasn't the point of starting Fitzpatrick this year. I mean, this is a guy that is a perfect bridge. When he took over for Josh Rosen week 6 of last season, they went 8-9 under Fitzpatrick. And last season, that is a totally talent-deprived football team. A lot of people thought they were going to be 0-16 after those 6 weeks. So, and you saw the news today. Ryan Fitzpatrick was completely blindsided and had no idea it was coming and was heartbroken. And you have that, and look, he'll always be ready to come in. He's a very serious candidate to be moved at the deadline. So it is what it is. But you're telling me there aren't guys on the Dolphins that aren't thinking the same thing? They're not heartbroken for the guy. They don't disagree with him. They're not questioning Flores a little bit. Mike Gesicki came out 2 weeks ago, said Ryan Fitzpatrick, best teammate I've ever had. I'd run through a brick wall for that guy. And then you have this news today. They've won 2 straight. Their 3 losses were against New England, Buffalo, and Seattle. We've talked about it every week. They're playing great football. They have the 4th best point differential in the AFC. Head scratcher to me.
Yeah, and I actually have the quote that, I mean, from Ryan Fitzpatrick upon hearing the news that they were making the switch to Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, he said basically, here it is. My heart just hurt all day. It was heartbreaking for me. I've been a starter. I've been benched all kinds of different ways, but this one just really more so than any of them. I just felt fully committed and invested and felt like it was my team. And So you look at this quote, and obviously he felt that it was his team right at the present moment. He obviously knows that Tua Tagovailoa is the future of this team. We saw, and I thought it was great when we were watching. I was watching parts of the end of that game, and you have Ryan Fitzpatrick just leading the cheers for Tua Tagovailoa as they send him in the final offensive drive of the game against the Jets, and that just shows you how great of a teammate this guy actually is. But I think that maybe the fact that he was so instrumental in the development of Tua Tagovailoa, that maybe he thought he would have a little bit longer of a leash, especially when they've been winning football games. Usually we see Ryan Fitzpatrick lose a job because they've lost 4, 5, 6 games in a row, and they're looking for something else. This is a team that, especially with an expanded playoffs, where one extra team makes it in each conference, the Miami Dolphins are right in the thick of things in terms of the playoff picture. And I think he thinks right now, and to be honest, I do too, I think right now Ryan Fitzpatrick gives them the best chance at making the playoffs.
And I want to succeed. I think he will down the line, but you look at his injury history at Alabama, he got injured every single year he started, and he underwent 2 surgeries, ankle surgery in 2019 or 2018, and then he had the hip surgery last year. He had the fractured hip, and he had a posterior wall fracture. It was the Bo Jackson injury. Now, obviously, medical technology is way further than it was in the 1980s. We know way more. They didn't understand how severe it was with Bo. But the doctor who had evaluated Tua said that this is a freak accident and that he had never seen this kind of damage done to a hip in someone so young and healthy and so strong. And it just makes you question it. The guy put it, when it happened in November, he put it, this is at least 8 to 12 months. I would err on the side of caution. And you throw him in to Aaron Donald with an offensive line with 3 rookies. Are they playing way better than last year? Yeah, absolutely. But Ryan Fitzpatrick also gets rid of the ball, I think the 3rd fastest per throw. I think he gets rid of the ball in under 2.5 seconds. Tua, what makes him great is he's able to extend the play and throw the ball down the field. Is he going to have those same clean looks and an ability to do that like he did at Alabama? Absolutely not. It's just – I'm kind of scared for him, honestly. So we'll see how it goes. But
yeah, like I said, the timing it just feels weird because of the fact that they are winning football games right now, and I mean, as again, we all know who the future of this franchise is, but right now, with as little playoff experience as the Dolphins have had over the past decade, right now it feels like the right time to make sure that you go after the playoffs, maybe instead of getting the young quarterback a few extra games, because I think the playoffs means a lot more to the players. Obviously, maybe all of the players except for Tua.
Yeah.
Next bit of news that we will get into is the I want to say shocking, but it's not so shocking anymore, news that another team could be experiencing a COVID outbreak. And we heard earlier today that the Las Vegas Raiders placed Trent Brown, offensive lineman, on the reserve COVID list. And they sent all of their offensive linemen home for fear of contact tracing. This has to worry you that we may see a couple extra positive tests over the next couple days. Obviously, tomorrow and Friday are going to be huge for the Raiders, making sure that everyone does test negative, because if with it being this late in the week, we've seen in the past the games that have been able to go on were from when there were positive tests early in the week. Now it's a little bit later in the week, and this, to be honest, this is a huge game, especially for their coach, John Gruden. You know he wants to beat Tampa with all of his heart, and you get the Raiders, who are coming off a bye, but also coming off that huge win against Kansas City, trying to keep that momentum and have a chance at the playoffs in the AFC. Again, the AFC is so wide open. But I think that this game was going to be one of those games that they were going to use as a building block, because if they felt that they were going to be a contender instead of a pretender, that make sure that game against Kansas City wasn't a fluke. This game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where they're coming off a huge win over the Green Bay Packers, what was one that they needed to put their stamp on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really tough to practice without an offensive line. And Thursday is one of the practice days in the NFL schedule. Friday's a dress rehearsal and Thursday's a practice day. These are two crucial, like you said, in the middle of the week, there's a crucial time to be getting a positive. And this is their biggest test from an offensive standpoint. We saw what Tampa Bay did last week to Green Bay. I mean, that is about as stout as a front seven as it gets in the NFL. Even without Vita Vea, they were absolutely terrorizing Green Bay's offensive line. That's the best pass blocking unit the first 5 weeks of football. They were in the backfield every single play, pressuring Rodgers, hitting him every single drop back. I mean, to not practice this week for the Raiders, that it really couldn't come at a worse time. They do have the bye, so that is an advantage, but this is not for a team as well coached as the Buccaneers. It is not ideal for John Gruden's squad going into Sunday night.
Yeah, and I mean, this was going to be one of those games that I was looking forward to the most this weekend. Again, wanting to see how the Raiders were able to build off of the win against Kansas City, using the extra week off to prepare for Tampa Bay. And again, you love revenge factor games, and there is no more in terms of coaching a revenge game. And I know it's 20 years. Almost 20 years old now, but the John Gruden and the Raiders and Buccaneers have a major history, and so you know that he's circling this one. He had this one circled from the week that or the minute that this game was announced. So let's just hope that we see no more positive tests from the Raiders over the next couple days, so that this game can go on. And the final bit of news that I wanted to get into was I'm sorry, I had it right here. It's Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is now, we're almost a week and a half away from him being able to come off of the suspension list. And we're starting to hear rumors about a possible landing spot. And the one that we're starting to hear the most right now is the one that we were hearing about during preseason the most, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. And the fact that they're going to continue with the possibility of bringing in Antonio Brown right now is a bit of a head scratcher, because I think that preseason, they didn't know about the development of DK Metcalf. Now we've seen DK Metcalf has turned into a legit NFL receiver stud. And the combination of him and Tyler Lockett are maybe the best 1-2 punch in the entire league right now. So it would be kind of a head-scratching move for them to go in and bring in someone like an Antonio Brown, because he's going to demand targets. That he's going to demand attention, whether it be from the media, from whatever. What do you make of the news that we've heard so far from Antonio Brown?
I'm totally with you. I really find it hard to believe that Seattle is making a push to sign him, but those are the reports. I get that Pete Carroll has the personality and is a likable coach and thinks he can deal with that talent, mold him into that Seattle way, have Russell calm him down. I get that fit, but yeah, I'm with you. What's the need? You don't have a need there. The offense is clicking at such a high level. The passing attack is the most potent in football right now. There are 5-6 other teams off the top of my head that I will go, yeah, they're interested in AB. Of course they are. Why not? On the makeup of their locker room, their coaching staff, I would get Ravens, Patriots, a couple other teams, but the Seahawks is not one of those teams that pops into my head. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. So obviously, to me, the one that made the most sense was the Patriots. I'm not sure they go down that route after how last year ended. With it was just so much turmoil where he comes in and he has an enormous one game with the Patriots, and then it abruptly ends. The Patriots need a wide receiver. They need someone to come in, because we're seeing the beginning of the end for Julian Edelman. He is at least a half step slower than he has been. N'Keal Harry has glimpses, but there's just no consistency with him. Demarius Byrd is still just so raw. They need somebody to come in, and usually they've had a tight end to lean on. They don't have a tight end to lean on. And we'll get into some of this with the takeaways. But partially, that could be the reason why Cam Newton has struggled throwing the ball the way that he has. But the team that made the most sense to me was the Houston Texans. And sure, they've had Will Fuller he's stayed healthy, and what do you know? When he stays healthy, he's productive. That's always been the thing with Will Fuller. When he's healthy, he's productive. When he's not, obviously, it happens too often. But now Will Fuller has been healthy. He's been productive. But I still don't think of Will Fuller as your prototypical your prototypical star receiver. I think he's a great number 2. I'm not sure if he's a number 1 in the NFL yet. Antonio Brown could be that one that Deshaun Watson needs to take him over the edge and back to the level we saw when he had DeAndre Hopkins.
I think it's an interesting fit. I don't see the Texans going after him just because of their start at 1-5. I do think it's intriguing because I think Will Fuller is a guy that takes the top off the defense. He is an unbelievable vertical threat, and I think he's refined other parts of his game, especially this year. We've seen he's the number 1 option, and when healthy, he is good. And I think that the Texans system caters to the number 1 receiver a little bit and gives him a lot of volume. But the team that makes the most sense to me is Baltimore. I think it is a team that is desperate for some perimeter help for Lamar. And yes, I think he's been very inaccurate at times this year, but I also think that this perimeter is not helping him at all. They continue to throw out Willie Snead as a number 2 option. You have his cousin Hollywood on the other side of each other. Hollywood's more of a vertical threat anyway, and I think Antonio Brown could be that refined underneath possession route runner killer underneath for Lamar, and he could be that go-to security blanket. Because look, they drafted guys like James Prochet and Devin Duvernay, and Duvernay is a nice gadget player, and he's already had some electric plays, but he's not an every down guy you can count on yet. He's a rookie. I think Baltimore is right there, and they're definitely close to the AFC's wide open, but they're missing something on offense. They're absolutely missing something. And I think with how well run that organization is, they can take the risk of AB. They have that locker room makeup where I think it's a calculated risk.
Yeah, and I think he's the perfect complement for a Hollywood Brown. He said a lot of times, even though some of these players, and they're built very similarly, they have very similar physical statistics, but they're completely different wide receivers. And sometimes you just need that variety from your wide receiver core, because otherwise defenses can just sit on what these wide receivers are good at. When you have this variety and you have the ability of Antonio Brown to play the short medium game, you have Mark Andrews taking the seam, and you have Hollywood Brown. And obviously, you know that if they bring in Antonio, you're going to get the best out of Hollywood after that. With his cousin being there, you know that's going to give him that extra spark. So, and you have him taking the top off the offense. So, yeah, Baltimore does make a lot of sense. It is time for us to get into our Week 6 takeaways. Why don't you lead us off?
I will start with the Vikings. We talked about the Falcons last week, how they might be going through a roster overhaul going into next year. They're in a weird spot. And what do you know? The Falcons go out and absolutely beat down the Vikings, who fall to 1-5. They definitely don't have the talent of a 1-5 team. They haven't necessarily played like a 1-5 team until this weekend, but they had two heartbreakers against Tennessee and Seattle. Two games they were leading or in contention to win that game the entire time, and they lose both of them. It's really hard to come back from games like that throughout the course of the season. You start to question a guy like Mike Zimmer, who's been there for a while. His voice gets stale, and I'm not calling for them to fire Zimmer. I think the absence of Anthony Barr, Danielle Hunter, and Michael Pierce on this defense is absolutely astronomical, because this defense can't stop anyone right now. And they have an identity made on defense, and they can't stop anyone right now. Moving forward, they have a lot of pieces that could be traded at the deadline. There was an anonymous report that two veterans had demanded to be traded. The validity of that, I have no idea, but just looking at guys that they can move, you look at a guy like Kyle Rudolph, and we had talked about the emergence of Irv Smith, and he did it again. He saw 80% of snaps, his highest usage this year, had 4 more catches for 60 yards. And look, I think it's time to hand the reins off to your 2019 second rounder. I think Rudolph's an easy candidate. I think both their safeties, Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith, are obvious candidates to get traded. And I will go with Riley Reif. Their offensive line has been a huge issue, but both their tackles are not a part of that. Brian O'Neill has been a really nice young piece to build around, and Riley Reif was looked to be on the chopping block. After they drafted Ezra Cleveland in the second round, it looked like Reif might be on his way out, but they decided to groom him, let Reif continue to be that left tackle, and he's had his best year since they extended him to a 5-year contract a few years ago. But now that you see a team like the Cowboys lose 2 tackles and you see the Titans lose Lawan, I think those are obvious candidates to trade for someone like Reif. I'm curious to see what they do. I don't think they blow it up. I don't think they really should. And it all comes back to Kirk Cousins. Everyone's mad at Kirk Cousins, and he leads the league in picks, and he put that game out of reach in the first half with 3 picks. He always has 1 or 2 picks a week. It seems like they're just completely head-scratching. But Instead of letting him play it out this year, they decide to extend it to 2022 this year. So they're stuck with Cousins. They don't have a long-term solution. So as much as people are calling to move Cousins, it is an immovable contract for the next 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, that was part of the risk that they knew they were taking by signing him to a shorter term deal than what most quarterbacks look for in a 3-year deal. But the fact that it was this, the first time we ever saw a quarterback sign a fully guaranteed contract. And it just, they were putting all of their chips into the middle of their table by making this signing. And it has backfired because he hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't been a $27 million quarterback. It's just plain and simple.
You see the spurts. I mean, Thielen and Jefferson have been ridiculous this year. I mean, you're right. The yardage is there. The big plays are there, but they don't. They also just don't have a long-term solution there. I think something they could do, they have 10 more picks going into next year. Maybe Spielman throws a few picks at the Jets and they go after Darnold and he sits behind Cousins for a year or two. I think that's something they could look into. We'll have to see.
Yeah. It's a very weird team because they should be much better than they are. On paper, they're one of the better teams. They just and Kirk Cousins just, to me, he doesn't have the it factor. He never has. I don't think he ever will. So
those big games, there's always something missing.
Yep. It's like Andy Dalton in prime time. Andy Dalton, Andy Dalton, maybe one of the worst primetime quarterbacks in.
But he's an above average regular season quarterback throughout his career.
Right. So perfect segue. My first takeaway is, and we saw a really bad Andy Dalton this week. But no matter no matter how good or bad Andy Dalton may be this year, there may not be many more wins coming for the Cowboys. And their defense, I mean, what was it? I think Kyler Murray threw for 37% completion percentage, and they dominated the game. I've never
they
seen
all went for 25 yards.
Yeah, the 80-yarder to
the 60-yarder
to Hopkins, and then you have Kenyon Drake awakening from the dead. And I don't know how many times I actually went onto Twitter and I found so many people posting screenshots that when they're trying to kill the clock, Kenyon Drake runs up the middle, 69-yard touchdown, and you don't know how many times I saw a screenshot where that play either won somebody or lost somebody a week in fantasy.
I saw so many of those too.
Oh,
great. How about going into Monday night and needing like 30 points from Kenyon Drake, and he literally went out there and did it. It's the Cowboys. That's the Cowboys defense for you this year. It's literally the Jets offense this year. It's just so laughable.
Oh, it's so bad. And that's the reason why there may not be many more wins, because we all know that Andy Dalton isn't Dak Prescott. No one's expecting him to be Dak Prescott. But I think there were enough people that thought that he could give 75 to 80% of Dak Prescott, and that could have been good enough to maybe win, to come away with 6-7 wins, which in this division may get you into the playoffs. I just don't see that happening. This is a defense that can get beat in so many different ways that anybody in the NFL can take advantage. Look at the Giants. I know they had a defensive touchdown, so they actually only put up 27. But for the Giants to put up 27 points, they hadn't done that against anybody else. Even Washington held them to 20. So the Giants offense put up 27 points against this Cowboys defense. That's all you need to know about how bad this group is. And maybe they get 2 division wins for the rest of the year. Maybe they hold on and they get another win against the Giants, or another win against Washington, or maybe one against Philly. But I just don't see them going outside of division and beating anybody else.
Everyone wants to bash Andy Dalton too, and I get it. It's funny and whatever, but the way that this offensive line, how decimated they are, they're down to their 3rd and 4th tackles, and Brandon Knight got hurt after the game. We don't even know if he could go this week. With how much pressure that guy's facing, Zach Martin got hurt in the middle of the game.
Well, I mean, Zach Martin may be the second best offensive lineman in the entire NFL right now, and even he had to leave this Monday night's game.
You at least had a chance with Dak to extend the play. Exactly. You at least had a chance to extend the play with Dak's legs. Andy Dalton can't do that. He's a stationary pocket passer. You couple that with Zeke's fumble issues, and then this defense has to be on the field for more than half the game. They get back Lane Vander Esch. I'm thinking to myself, all right, at least they get a little bit of a spark. This Cardinals rushing offense has really struggled besides Kyler. Maybe something materializes this game, and it's the same old Cowboys we saw the first 5 weeks. I don't know. I don't see a way they redeem it. And now you see the reports that the players are coming out, these anonymous reports that they're already not believing in this coaching staff. They're unprepared. They don't know what they're doing. They're already questioning what they're doing. Absolute nightmare.
Yep. And so I'll even tie a little bit of fantasy in. Right now, you know that if you look to trade Zeke, there's going to be somebody who's going to be willing to pay enough for the name Ezekiel Elliott. I'd be looking to trade him wherever I could, because if this Zach Martin injury is for any extended period of time, they're going to have 0 starters along that line, and it's just not the same offensive line that has made Zeke one of the most prolific running backs in the league over the past couple of years. So I'd look to trade the name Ezekiel Elliott while I still can. What's your number 2?
I want to get into the Pitt-Tennessee game and the implications of this game. 2 5-0 teams. They already have some bad blood because Pittsburgh they didn't want to play 13 straight weeks. And these are 2 of the most balanced teams in football. Speaking offensively, both these teams have an ability to run the football. Obviously, Tennessee a little bit at a higher level with Derrick Henry, but neither team relies on their pass or their run. Tennessee's defense has struggled a little more than I thought they would at the start of the season. They're still winning games, but with Mike Vrabel, they've had an identity on defense. And Pittsburgh, we already know that's a top defense in the NFL. They're the only team in NFL history to start out the first 5 games with at least 3 sacks and an interception in each game. Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry last week. Ryan Tannehill throws for over 350 and Derrick Henry runs for over 200. That's the first time a QB and running back have ever done that in a regular season game in NFL history. You get this offense and that Steelers defense colliding against each other. That is a clash of the titans right there, pun intended. I saw a tweet today, and I was going to go into it. Just logically thinking, I'm like, all right, look, it is going to have huge implications for the 1 seed. And we know the power of the 1 seed in the NFL playoffs is very real. In the past 5 years, out of the 10 teams in the Super Bowl, 7 of them were 1 seeds. The last 3 were 2 seeds. In NFL Research had tweeted it today. In the afternoon, and it was an absolutely unbelievable stat. This is the 5th time in NFL history that 2 undefeated teams are playing week 7 or later. The previous 4 winners made the Super Bowl. So if that doesn't almost tell you how important this game is, I don't know what will. Going to the 7-team format, the 1 seed is the only team with a bye now.
Yep.
The 1 seed is the only team that has to win 2 games now, so it becomes even that much more important to be a 1 seed this year and have that much more urgency. I can't wait to watch this game.
Yeah, This is obviously the one that's circled on everybody's lists, and again, you said it with the bad blood, because this is the rescheduled game from when the Titans had the COVID outbreak. So this game should have been the bye week, but now that bye week was moved up, and you know that's gonna play in the head of the Steelers. And I mean, that game last week between the Titans and Texans was one of the most fun endings to a football game I've seen in quite some time. And so I want to get your insight into what you would have done.
That's my third takeaway. That's my third takeaway.
The Texans score. Okay, so all right, so we'll get into that, and all right, so we'll wait on that. This was just the fact, and you have such huge games from so many different players. With Tannehill 4 touchdowns, Henry 2 touchdowns and 200 yards. AJ Brown just continuing to
Anthony Firkser.
Yeah. Jonnu Smith gets nicked up, and it's like Anthony Firkser is now Rob Gronkowski out there. I mean, this game was the Oprah for fantasy points. You get fantasy points. You get fantasy points. Everybody gets fantasy points in that game. And the Tennessee Titans have now had 2 weeks in a row where you had the game against Buffalo where nobody was giving them a chance, even though they were 3-0 at the time. Nobody was everyone was, oh, this is Buffalo. Look at Buffalo, the mighty Buffalo Bills, and they destroyed Buffalo. And then they had every right to lose last week's game at different points throughout the game, and they bared down and came away with the victory. This is going to be a fun game.
I can't wait.
Yeah. My second takeaway is going to be about the Tampa Bay defense, and we obviously look at the 38-10 final score and say, well, obviously look at what Tom Brady and the offense were able to do to the Green Bay Packers, and the offense had its way, but the reason why they had its way is they had short fields all game. Well, after it was 10-0 Green Bay, and then once
pick six changed the entire game.
Pick six changed the entire game. I don't know if you saw, that was only the third pick six Aaron Rodgers has thrown in his career.
That dude is ridiculous. I would like to know how many times he's thrown interceptions on back-to-back drives. It's just what he did, and I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Was it back-to-back attempts?
Oh, no. Back-to-back drives.
Oh, I knew it was back-to-back drives, but was it not back-to-back attempts?
It very well might have been.
I mean, and it was very close. It was, 2 yards away from being back-to-back pick sixes?
And then Ronald Jones ran it in.
Yeah. But this Tampa Bay defense is doing it on all three levels. That front, the defensive line is eating up any ground game. The linebackers are blitzing. They're causing trouble in the backfield. They're also doing a great job covering those tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. And the secondary has been terrific.
Antoine Winfield is an absolute superstar.
Winfield has been one of the top players, top rookies in the league this year.
We've talked about Carlton Davis.
Yeah, Carlton Davis has been one of the top cornerbacks, if not the top cornerback in the entire NFL right now. This Tampa Bay defense is the spark plug to this team, and if they're going to continue to give Tom Brady short fields, he's going to take advantage of that all day long. So, I mean, I think a lot of people were giving them a chance at the division because of the potential of the offense. You have with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, with Tom Brady, and the weapons out of the backfield, and you had the three-headed monster at tight end, which is now two-headed with O.J. Howard getting hurt. But you also have Gronkowski and Cameron Brate. But this defense is going to be the reason that they're going to end up winning this division.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm ready to overreact. I don't care. I'm totally in on the Buccaneers just because of how balanced they are. You said it. You can't run the ball on them. They completely took Aaron Jones away. Devin White and Levante David are two of the most athletic inside backers in the game. They complement each other so well. And then on offense, you're seeing Ronald Jones is a viable threat out of the backfield. He's had 3 straight 100-yard games. They got those two on the outside, Godwin and Evans, and you have Tom Brady. Mentally, that guy is an edge over everyone. This is a scary team going into January in the playoffs. No one wants to see them.
Oh, absolutely not. And you look at the relationship between Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles. I mean, Bowles played under Arians at Temple when Arians was the head coach there. Arians brings Bowles in to be the defensive coordinator in Arizona when Arizona was potentially one of the top 2 or 3 defenses for a couple years in a row while Bowles was at the helm. And Bowles then went over and was the head coach of the Jets, which we now know is where coaches go to die.
But their defense was lights out. Everywhere he goes, the defense is always the top 5 defense.
Yeah, and he took a defense that was dead last, number 32 in defensive metrics in 2018, to number 6 last year, and they're number 1 currently this year. Todd Bowles, we got to start giving the man credit for being one of the best defensive minds in the game right now.
Right.
Your final week 3 takeaway.
You alluded to it. The almighty 2-point conversion attempt. The Texans are up by 1 on the 1-yard line. The first controversial decision, they go for it on the 1. You could kick it and go up by 4 and force the Titans to kick a field goal or to get a touchdown. They can't kick a field goal anymore to win the game. But he elects to go for a touchdown, Romeo Crennel, which, first of all, I agree with. The thinking there, you have Deshaun Watson, you give him 4 downs. They don't get it. They're on the 1-yard line. And Steven Gostkowski has not been the most reliable kicker. And, I mean, look, no one wants to start a drive on the 1 with 1:45 left to go in the game. I think that's a smart move. They score the touchdown, then they go for 2. Now, Rich Gannon absolutely lost his mind and was spieling about for 5 minutes during the middle of this game about how Romeo Crennel has his analytics mixed up and it's an awful decision. You take your extra point, you go up by 8, so you force them to score 2 touchdowns, get the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. So at the worst, it's overtime. But if the end of that game doesn't prove that Romeo Crennel made the right decision, I don't know what will. They go for 2, they don't get it. The Titans get the ball and go right down the field and score, and then they lose the coin flip and the Titans go down and score. I think it's a really smart decision. They weren't going to stop the Titans all day.
No.
You're going against Mike Vrabel, a mastermind of a coach. You know he has 100 2-point conversion plays up his sleeve, him and Arthur Smith. Even if they don't get it, I still think it's the right decision just because of how the way that game was going. You're 1-5 or you're 1-4 in a divisional game. This is a way to steal a game. You end the game right there. You go up by 9, and he's a genius. But then because he doesn't get it, everyone questions it. I think this is the way the NFL is going. And you want to talk about analytics and the percentage of this and that, and I just think you use your head. Your offense was playing at such a high level, and you weren't stopping the Titans on Sunday.
Yeah, and obviously you need to look at what the success rate is of 2-point conversions, and which would you rather be in? Would you rather be in because it's between 50 and 55% success rate this year over the past 2 years. So you're slightly above 50%. Do you want to be the one who has to stop a 55%? And even if you do stop it, if you kick the extra point and they do convert the 2-point conversion, you still have overtime.
Exactly.
If you make it, you are putting yourself into a greater than 50% chance of you completing the 2-point conversion and giving them 0% chance at winning the game. I thought going for 2 was the absolute right move.
And
if you can put the game out of reach, you can. You do it.
Football, it's a funny game because you have the way it's been played for almost 100 years. If we go back to 1930, there are obvious progressions of the game. And what we're seeing now is you spread it out, and these quarterbacks are so much better than they ever have been. And offenses are just lighting it up. The game's completely evolving, but you see these hard-headed coaches that stick in their ways for maybe a couple years too long, and they don't adapt, and they get exposed. I mean, football was played with a fullback for 60 years, and now you don't even see them. They're expendable now just because of how offenses are structured. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with fullbacks, but that's just the way the game's going. And I think the guys like Rich Gannon who think like that, no one's going to think like that in 3 or 4 years. It's going to be completely normalized in football, this line of thinking. When offenses are this good and you can put games out of reach, why not go for it? Why not be aggressive?
Yeah. Again, you said it. We're gonna start to see analytics come into, and we've already seen in baseball, analytics have been ruling the game for the past 2-3 years, where teams are now okay with a player striking out if it gives them more of a chance at hitting a home run during the at-bat. See, it's funny because I'm more old school. I'm a National League guy. I love playing small ball. I love the hit and run. Any chance to advance a runner. That's what
doesn't happen. Doesn't happen anymore.
And it doesn't happen anymore, and it bothers me. But I also understand the reason why all of these analytics are coming out. And the one analytic that I hate is pitch count.
Oh my God.
Why all of a sudden, and I know this is a football podcast, but I need to vent my frustrations about pitch counts. How many pitches I don't know if you know, what was the average pitch count Nolan Ryan had over his career?
I'm going to say north of 100.
Try north of 130.
Oh my God! Well, it's so crazy to me. It's just arbitrary numbers when they pull these guys after 70 pitches. It's like, what science do you have behind that to know his arm won't sustain after whatever? I don't know. I don't get it. I'm not a baseball manager, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's the story about how Nolan Ryan I think it was in the mid 70s, not too long after he got traded to the Angels, where he pitched 13 innings, and obviously they didn't keep pitch counts on the screen like they do now, but they said that Nolan Ryan 235 pitches that game.
Oh my God!
There's some starters that take
some guys don't reach. Yeah, I was gonna say some guys take a month to get that.
Yeah, but yeah, so analytics, I think, while they are important in some places, and again, we're starting to see that in football. There are times where you need to go by gut instead of
They're a tool.
by analytics. All right, now that's out of my system. My final week 6 takeaway. And I started to get into it when I was talking about Julian Edelman and how we're starting to see the beginning of the end for him, and maybe it was too early to crown Cam Newton king of the comeback. Yeah, he looked pretty good in those first couple weeks. He was playing against pretty bad defenses. We're starting to see it's now a couple down games in a row, and sure, he has the rushing baseline, but that's more out of necessity rather out of I think out of pure quarterback talent. Right now, Cam Newton is the best running back on the team, so they're utilizing Cam Newton as a running back, very similarly to the way that the Baltimore Ravens are using Lamar Jackson. But just like we're seeing Lamar Jackson struggling to throw the ball because the weapons around him haven't been performing up to par. We're starting to see that from the New England Patriots, and he just has no reliable targets anymore. And so that could be aiding into why we're starting to see some downplay from Cam Newton. But some of the decisions he's been making while actually throwing the ball were ones that he wasn't making earlier on in this year. And maybe we were a bit too early.
This is a huge game for them. This week against San Fran. San Fran now has Jason Verrett, who's been an absolute superstar corner, but they got Emmanuel Mosley back. So they were once down their first 5 corners, but now they got – I mean, you still don't have Sherm, but you got 2 starting caliber corners back, and one of them being Verrett, who I think is front runner for comeback player of the year. Their wide receivers have to play way better. I mean, and we talked about it, but the tight end position is non-existent for them. You're relying on Ryan Azell. That's not going to get it done. Their opposing teams are going to bracket Edelman in the slot, and they're making Damiere Byrd and N'Keal Harry beat you. I think Harry has a lot of interesting and promising traits, and he's a freak athlete, and he was thrown into the fire last year, week 11 with Tom Brady, and never really got a grasp on that offense. And like you said, we see those glimpses, but this is a guy who really struggles to separate against those smaller, quicker corners. They really need help at the deadline. We alluded to it with Emory last week. Guy like A.J. Green, maybe a Kenny Stills from Houston. But they got to get creative. They got to shop around because this receiving core is not going to get it done. It's just not.
Yeah, maybe even something a little less. And you brought up A.J. Green. I think right now you can get away with trading a 6th round draft pick or a 7th round draft pick for John Ross. Just something different. John Ross has been a healthy scratch, and for good reason. John Ross has not been good. He's shown spurts, but absolutely zero consistency. He can't beat any sort of press coverage, but the guy still is one of the fastest players in the NFL, and maybe something like that is what the Patriots need. And I think he can be had for really cheap right now. So that's going to do it for our Week 6 takeaways. And now what everyone's been waiting for, the extensive coverage of Giants-Eagles Thursday Night Football. The Giants are coming off their first win of the season, and here this goes right into your analytics with how the Giants ended up with that win. They're up by 7. Washington scores a touchdown in the final minute of the game to pull it to 20-19, and they decide to go for 2.
Kyle Allen.
Riverboat Ron giveth, and Riverboat Ron taketh away. So I was actually on the post game press conference with Ron Rivera, and I was able to ask him if, being at the time they still are only a game out of first place, if that may have led to his decision, or maybe it would have crossed his mind about potentially going for the extra point and playing for overtime. And his quote to me was, "When you're on the road with that little time left, we're playing to win. You never know what's going to happen, even if you do kick the extra point." So that just goes right into what we were talking about with the Titans and Texans. And he went for it, and the Giants just had the perfect defensive call for it.
I mean, I think players respond well to that too. I don't understand all these purists or traditionalists who are so stuck in the ways that they want the extra point, play for overtime. But the way it's structured, you might not even get the ball. You might not have a chance to win. So it's like, why wouldn't you want to see more aggression, it's just fun football. It's a fun ending. I don't understand why there's so much holdback from certain people, but that's just me.
My biggest question into that was, I think you have to put a little bit of trust into your defense, who had done a great job against the Giants offense in the second half. The Giants didn't score any offensive points in the second half. Their only touchdown came on the take route or fumble recovery. So the defense had been able to shut down the Giants offense over quite some time, and maybe you want to give them a little bit of a boost and say, we trust you, even if we lose the coin toss, we trust you that you're going to give us an opportunity to win the game where you're going to at least hold them to a field goal. So that would have been my only, I wish I had been able to ask that as well, but they cut the conference pretty short. So now we have 2 teams who are getting ready to take over first place in the NFC East. The Eagles they've lost now 2 in a row. But they've been to the top
Steelers
2 teams in the AFC North, the Steelers and the Ravens. And at halftime, you would have said, there's a good chance Carson Wentz isn't going to finish this game. And both of those games ended up to be really close towards the end. So is this what sort of, I don't know if this means we're only going to get good Carson Wentz if he's trailing by a lot in games, or is this now something that Carson Wentz can build on and maybe play like that for a 60-minute period of time, because we haven't seen it yet this year. We haven't seen him. The closest would have been against San Francisco, but this Giants defense has been much better than anyone would have thought they would have been, and 43 seems like a perfect line for the over-under.
Definitely.
What are we looking at with Carson Wentz?
It's definitely a tale of 2 seasons so far. If you want to have the 3-game mark kind of be that midway point for Carson so far, the first 3 games, he might have been the worst starter in football. The dude was turning the ball over left and right, sailing throws, throwing them in the ground. His mechanics looked off. He was completely erratic. And what do you know, when the Eagles lose everyone, Carson gets that kind of moxie that we saw in the end of last year, and he puts the team on his back. He says, all right, we're going to go do this thing. But like you said, they had put together 60 minutes. My biggest gripe with the Doug Peterson tenure has been their notorious slow starts. And he is the offensive guru. He wants to be fast, spread it out. And I think you see glimpses of it. But in the beginning of games, when it's game scripted, when the defense is still feeling out the offense, they always struggle. They're always tentative. It's never an aggressive start to the game, it seems like. The only time we saw it was Washington, and they completely fell apart in the second half. It's really mind-boggling to me. It's something they need to correct because against good teams, it gets exposed. I mean, against the Steelers and the Ravens, they were down 17. I think they were a little lucky to come back in both games. And Carson's seeing a lot more prevent coverage in the second half, teams that are kind of just trying to get through the game, play it safe, give them all that underneath stuff. But like you said, the Giants have been stingy. They've allowed 20 points or less in 3 of their 6 games. Their interior D-line, I think, is a huge mismatch for this Eagles interior offensive line. It's something I'll be watching. I think Bradbury against Travis Fulgham is going to be – I can't believe I'm saying that, but yeah, James Bradbury versus Travis Fulgham is going to be a fun matchup to watch tomorrow night. Carson's got to be on his A game. I'm a little nervous for this game, honestly. Like we've talked about, this Giants defense is no slouch.
Yeah, so I think both of us were off of Terry McLaurin last week because of the matchup with James Bradbury, and we saw Washington move McLaurin around the field, and he didn't get the shadow coverage. Bradbury just stuck to his left side, and we saw McLaurin have some success when he got away from Bradbury. And it's fun because who now do the Eagles go into this knowing that Travis Fulgham might be their best wide receiver right now? Do they use him as the movable piece and use someone like a Deshaun Jackson who's just coming off of the injury and maybe say, you go out there and you be our sacrificial lamb, and you go and you take the James Bradbury coverage, and we're okay if you give us nothing all game if it opens up more for Fulgham somewhere else. I think that's a very real possibility. But the biggest thing for me is notorious and Giants killer Zach Ertz won't be playing. And sure, Zach Ertz has not been good this year, but Zach Ertz always puts up 79 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Giants. And with Dallas Goedert still questionable, but it looks like it's more towards the out than the in. It's going to be Richard Rodgers, who doesn't pose any sort of real threat to me. It's going to end without Miles Sanders. It's going to be the Boston Scott and Corey Clement show, and Boston Scott has not looked good in his limited opportunities so far this year. I think that this has all the makings of a 17-14 kind of game.
Definitely. And I would have told you on Monday or Tuesday, I really believed that the Giants were going to win this game, but now that it's pointing towards Lane Johnson playing tomorrow, even if you get a 70%, if you get a 70% Lane Johnson, that is so much better than a Brett Toth that you have to throw out there, a 280-pound Brett Toth who has seen very limited action in his experience in the NFL. We've talked about it. Lane Johnson's impact is absolutely huge for this Eagles offense, but it kind of has the makings of a trap game, weirdly, for a 1-4 team. In the Eagles 1-4-1, it's weird because they're 1-4-1. But you're playing the Giants, so we're good now, and we'll be fine against the Giants. We'll be able to run our stuff, and it's not going to go like that. Last year in Monday night, we saw how ugly that game was, and it took overtime for the Eagles to beat the Giants. But I really wasn't feeling that good until Lane Johnson is slated to play tomorrow night. So I'll go with the Eagles tentatively, but I think it is going to be one of those muck it up 17-14, 20-17 kind of games.
Yeah, I mean, right now on FanDuel, the line is at 4.5. So if you were to ask me, I'd probably pick the Eagles, but take the Giants to cover. And the over under is actually right now at 45. So I'd be smashing the under.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, I'd lean Eagles to win in a pretty close game.
Mhm.
But this is also one of those games that could be one of those you're expecting 17-14 and you see 47-44.
Because that's what Thursday night has weirdly done to us.
Yeah,
Jets Broncos.
right. Exactly.
Right.
The feel of this game was the exact way both of us felt about Jets Broncos.
So weird.
Yeah. We will quickly pick our the Sunday night and Monday night games. Two pretty interesting games. So this is one that we started to talk about. The Sunday night game, hopefully it gets played, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling out to Vegas to take on the Raiders. What do you like in this game?
It's interesting. We talked about how do the Raiders handle that win after KC. Derek Carr's never beat Mahomes in his career. That's a monumental victory. They're right in the thick of the wild card race right now in the AFC. But now you roll in against Tampa at home. But Tampa, I mean, they look like that defense. I mean, it's them, the Ravens, the Steelers, and maybe Indy that you're like, all right, these defenses are elite. And Derek Carr's going to have his work cut out for him. They're 3-0 with Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs is going to see Carlton Davis, Antoine Winfield in that back end. I think Darren Waller has to have a huge game for them to have a chance, and I think they're going to have to be able to run the football at a really high level. I like the Buccaneers here, but I think it's going to be a really tight game at Vegas.
Yeah, I'm also going to take Tampa. I just think that the way that they're playing right now, with as much balance between running the ball, passing the ball, defending the run, defending the pass, they're awfully tough to beat right now. This should be a fun game. I'm expecting the Raiders to score more than the 10 that Green Bay put up this week. Partially because I don't think Green Bay has anybody that can do to a defense what Henry Ruggs is going to be able to do. And again, we've said in the past, it may not come in terms of actual statistics with Henry Ruggs, but his pure speed can change how a defense aligns itself and the coverages it chooses to put out there, because they're afraid of what he can do over the top. So I think Ruggs is instrumental, and especially if Henry Ruggs can get an early 70-yard pass, it's going to completely change how Tampa comes out with their defense. But I will take Tampa in what I'm hoping to be a close game. And to round out the week, you have two teams that are enigmas to me, and that's the worst 5-1 team maybe in the history of football, the Chicago Bears, going out to LA to take on the 4-2 Rams. And the Rams, it's good for 2 weeks, bad for one. Good for 2 weeks, bad for one. So they had their bad for one last week against San Francisco. I can see the Rams bouncing back in a big way this week.
Yeah, and they're at home. We know how Goff likes to play at home. It's funny you say that. It's just so funny to me how the Bears are 5-1 and literally no one's buying it. I think it's great. They're the 2 seed in the NFC over Green Bay, but I'm with you. I mean, I think this is a 5-1 team that I really could see go 7-9 or 8-8. I like here. My one thing with the Bears, we talked about elite defenses. I think the Bears defense is right on that cusp because they keep them in every single game. Talk about mucking it up. Every game's ugly. Every single game they play is ugly, but it comes down to the wire. Nick Foles pulls something up his sleeve and they somehow win, but it never looks good. But here they are, 5-1. With the Rams, I mean, I think Sean McVay does everything in his power to hide Goff in that offense, and it is a very friendly system to a quarterback, and it doesn't require Goff to make crazy reads and crazy throws, and they have the athletes to create after the catch. If they're able to run the ball and open up their jet game, their bootleg game, that opens everything else up for their offense. Darrell Henderson had a surge in the third quarter against San Fran, and they kind of ran away from it. I expect the Rams to run the ball with some success against this Chicago defense and pull out a 24-20 win. But yeah, this is a really weird game to me. Two really good records, but I don't think too much of these teams in terms of the playoffs.
Yeah. So you were talking about how the Bears defense has been keeping them. They have to keep in order for because this is just, and it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, one of the more inept offenses in the league, and they have pieces. It's just all about quarterback play, and they just have not been able to get consistent quarterback play out of either Mitch Trubisky or Nick Foles. This is a really good defense. They have players at every level. But the big thing for me is going to be how well the Rams' offensive line can play. And they've been much better than they were last year, which is surprising because they didn't make a whole lot of moves along the line. But continuity plays a whole lot into the development of offensive lines.
Absolutely.
And so I think the Rams' offensive line is going to have to play really big. We are starting to see Henderson pull away from the pack right now as the lead running back. And here's you can't trust coach speak, because last week you heard Sean McVay coming out and say we need to get Cam Akers more touches, more involved in the game, and he didn't have any touches. So I think they're
absolutely brutal. He's worse than Belichick with running backs.
Oh my God! And I think there were a lot of people who took what McVay played and went into their daily fantasy lineups and threw a dart at Cam Akers, hoping that he'd be able to give some production at a lower cost. And then just to give an absolute goose because he wasn't given the opportunities that McVay said they needed to give him. So, and it wasn't like the game script was so out of reach that they needed to only throw the ball. No. The game was still within reach for most of the game. And Cam Akers has shown in college that he's more than capable of catching the ball out of the backfield
without an offensive line.
Oh my God, that Florida State offensive line made the Giants offensive line look like the Colts. I've never seen, from watching as much film as I did on Cam Akers, I never saw until this year watching Saquon Barkley see a running back get hit in the backfield more than Cam Akers got hit in the backfield at Florida State last year. The kid's got a ton of talent, but he's just not been given any of the opportunity, partially because Darrell Henderson has been pretty good.
Looks good, yeah.
Yeah, but I am going to go with the Rams. So that will wrap up this week's episode. Make sure you're following Back Sports Page on all social media platforms at Back Sports Page. Check out the website for all the great content. The archives for all of the shows are up there. Got great shows going up there like the Trifecta, the Fourth and Long, and the Exit Velo, and of course, Randy's show is Off Topic. Make sure you're checking out all of those. Subscribe to us on YouTube, and turn on notifications on Facebook so that you can know when all of these shows are going live. So until we meet again on Sunday for BSP Sunday Morning Fantasy, follow Derek on Twitter at Derek Mountain. I am at rstern33. And Derek, I'll see you on Sunday.
Thursday Night Football's back. Who would you rather have? Giants, Eagles. Let's do it.
For first place. All right. Have a great one.